What lay beneath that ordinary slope was a machine built for death. A sprawling, subterranean laboratory and production complex for fentanyl, run by the Sinaloa Cartel and guarded like a fortress. For years, that valley had been a pipeline's heart, a place where tons of poison were refined, packaged, and sent outward. The mountain's calm was a lie. Inside, men labored under fluorescent light to turn chemistry into catastrophe. Hundreds of fighters ringed the valley. Heavy machine guns, anti-tank obstacles, even mobile air defense batteries turned the landscape into fortification. They believed rock and camouflage and firepower made them untouchable. They were wrong. The story of the strike that erased that complex, a campaign known in classified channels as Hammer, began. The quiet signatures of a human world. At first, the feed showed little, scattered campfires, a few domestic lights. Then the aircraft's analytic tools, an AI layer fed by satellite and human. The pattern of logistics, the scale of a shipment. These were not the gestures of a small trafficking cell. They hinted at an industrial operation on a grand and lethal scale. Data flowed up. Diplomacy alone. The complex was vast, buried beneath rock and false facades. A reinforced underground chamber, steel doors disguised as a farm warehouse, rows of pickup trucks bristling with billions. The calculus at the command center was nakedly urgent. If the operation continued for weeks, millions of doses would flood U.S. streets. If the United States moved hastily and clumsily, the result could be a diplomatic rupture with Mexico. The commanders faced a single clear question. Could the United States neutralize a subterranean factory in Mexican territory with zero civilian casualties and without alerting the world before the deed was done? The decision that followed balanced on two certainties. One, intelligence now provided a level of precision previously impossible. The operation's classified name moved through secure channels. Special operations teams were readied, Air Force assets prepared, and a timeline compressed toward a single night in May 12, 2025. From Coronado, near San Diego, a contingent of operators boarded AC-17 Globemaster. They were the kind of people trained to move like shadows, to enter, to break, to leave without leaving a trace. Parallel to that, in the skies and in secret hangars, the Air Force moved assets into place, an invisibility of logistics. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, fitted with penetrating warheads designed to bury through stone before detonating, staged from a base. F-35s and refuelers sat on alert to carve air control. High over the continent, RQ-170 and other intelligence platforms maintained a sentinel watch. The plan that emerged had the delicate geometry of modern warfare. Seam fighters below holes cut into the earth. Teams infiltrating on three axes, and the hammer from above waiting until the last link was closed. That geometry relied on synchronized movement. At a forward site near the border, AC-17 deposited Team 6 in the hours before dawn. The unit split into three assault elements. Alpha moved overland through dense scrub, closing on the northern approaches. Bravo slipped in under. UAVs and satellites drew a ring of sight around the valley. Electronic warfare teams prepared to silence signals that might broadcast the operation to the world. Even with all that preparation, the enemy adapted. Los Chapitos had not been idle. Report after report showed concentric rings of guards, mines, anti-air launchers, and a mobile jamming station at the tunnel mouth. A device designed to blind UAV eyes and scramble GPS. It was a lesson in asymmetric escalation, a criminal network that had armed itself like a light mechanized force. But the U.S. planners had also. The morning, under a low-hung fog that hugged the valley, the infiltration began. Rope teams slid from a lone MH-60 into tree shadows. Recon microdrones flitted under the brush to map minefields. Alpha cut through ridgelines, night optics painting enemy silhouettes in green monochrome. Charlie tunneled, laying charges to seal off egress, to trap the production cell in the belly of the mountain. Communications were sparse, encrypted, and surgical. In one of the first confrontations, a ramshackle pickup bristling with a large caliber machine gun rounded a bend into the half-light. It opened up. An operator returned fire with a suppressed M4. The firefight was brief but brutal. It was meant to be. Those seconds of violence tore the quiet open and set the valley alight with. Methodically, storming bunkers and clearing guard points while drones keyed movements to the command center. In minutes, the outer ring was pierced. Anti-air emplacements that had troubled planners were neutralized by a combination of kinetic airstrikes and close punches from the assault teams. And at 4 reduced, a fortified gun position. Helicopters and close-in fire denied escape routes. The valley's defenders found themselves outmaneuvered in patience and technology. Still, the most difficult part lay ahead, the underground complex. Its steel doors and concrete vaults were built to resist time and bomb blast. The planner solution drew on a weapon designed precisely for that purpose. A penetrating munition capable of passing through layers of rock before detonating deep. Within, collapsing tunnels and ovens alike. Once the assault teams had locked the complex from the outside and ensured that no person would be inadvertently left still in the surrounding compound. At 4:02, the last radio traffic fell to static. Operators waited in the particulate hush after detonation. The shock arrived like an animal roar. A 5,000-pound penetrating warhead smashed through the mountain's flank, slipped underground, and then its explosive force unmade chambers and machinery in a single engineered collapse. The blast ripped at the valley, throwing trees and earth into the air, and a cathedral of fire rose through the mouth of the ravine. With that pulse, the engine of fentanyl production, reactors, chemical stores, packaging lines, and the very millions of doses waiting to be shipped became buried debris. Satellite imagery, seconds later, confirmed what the teams on the ground felt in their bones. The concrete roof had caved. Tunnels had disappeared beneath a new mass of rubble. Anything alive and unextracted at that moment lay trapped. What mattered to the planners, the stated priority from the start, was minimizing civilian casualties and keeping the operation secret until completion. On both counts, the result, by official accounts, was as close to ideal as modern warfare permits. No collateral killing of, both real and radioactive. Men moved through ash and scorched metal, calling names. The scene was not triumphant. It was a study in exhausted engineering and the moral cost of precision violence. The operators departed as quietly as they had arrived, leaving behind the still smoldering wounds that would define a region's story for months. The strike carried immediate, market-level consequences. On the illegal trade's balance sheets, prices of fentanyl spiked. Distribution networks staggered, territories shifted, and the cartel's aura of invulnerability fractured. Sovereignty. Others quietly acknowledged relief at the elimination of an enormous production capacity located within their borders. For the communities nearest to the mountain, the event was an earthquake of rumor and fear, then a long, awkward period of reconstruction and rumor-driven rumor. People spoke of a mountain that had opened and swallowed its own secret. Beyond geopolitical, each step required integration. The persistent gaze of satellites, the low-end slow patience of Reaper crews, the human courage of ground teams, the mechanical secrecy of stealth bombers. The operation was an anatomy of contemporary power, surveillance, infiltration, and a decisive surgical strike. If there is poetry in that calculus, it is brutal and unromantic. Fire and data marched together, and the result was destruction measured in tons and doses and in fewer lives lost than the trade had promised to claim. There are moral certainties that come into conflict in operations like this. Sovereignty and security intersect awkwardly when non-state violence metastasizes across borders. The question of precedent is urgent. When does a state's duty to protect its people justify kinetic action in another nation's soil? The planners answer that question by emphasizing immediacy of harm and the failure of local law enforcement to dismantle a system that. The rooms where analysts compare digital shadows against human testimony. It is a world where a single convoy of trucks can translate into strategic priority, where an operator's suppressed rifle can be part of the same sentence as a stealth bomber's payload. In the months after the strike, the story of Durango was told in many voices. Military analysts hailed the operation as a template for future precision campaigns, coordinated intelligence, surgical ground action, and a single decisive airstrike. Humanitarian experts and diplomats reminded the public of the wider violence underlying the trade in drugs, addiction, community collapse, and the opaque economies that let cartels become near states themselves. The families of the dead, the men buried beneath rock and fire, were not afforded nuance by public debate. They were names on manifests in a private ledger known to few. The mountain kept its secrets even as it relinquished one of its engines of profit. There's a sentence that came to be quoted in briefings. Faith cannot armor steel. Men may believe rock and tunnels will hide them. They may believe guns and jammers will make them gods. But technology and tenacity can unmake those illusions. The Durango operation did not end the fentanyl trade. It interrupted and demonstrated vulnerability. It did, however, change a calculation. The idea that a facility could be invulnerable simply because it was deep and well-armed was disproved in one violent dawn. The legacy of that night will be debated for years. Tactically, the campaign became a case study on how to fuse intelligence with force while minimizing civilian harm. Strategically, it became an inflection point in a cross-border fight where national boundaries showed only a seam of blackened rock where a complex had stood. A reputation changed. Los Chapitos lost a node, and perhaps the myth of impunity that protected such nodes frayed. For U.S. forces, it was a lesson in the painful arithmetic of prevention. Some harms will be prevented only by force. Some will be prevented by policy and care. Many will require both. In the valley, life returned in small and stubborn ways. Cattle grazed again on farther slopes. Men rebuilt fences. Rumors stubbornly persisted, braided with grief and anger and relief. The mountain, altered and scarred, remained a mountain, indifferent to politics, hospitable to weather. It kept its weathered face to the sky, and the story that had passed through it took on a mythic cadence. A proof that technology, when married to resolve, can find a single doorway in a mountain and close it forever. In the ledger of modern conflict, Durango will be a footnote and a cautionary tale. It will be cited in doctrine as an example of precision and restraint, and it will be invoked in policy debates about sovereignty and action. Whatever the judgment, one fact stands steady. An industrial factory of death, hidden under stone and steel and guarded by men, no longer feeds its market. The mountain still stands, but the mechanism that once beat in its belly is a ruin. Ways that surveillance and firepower shape the modern world, and of how sometimes the only way to stop an industry of death is to bring hammer down.